At Easter dinner, my brother Marcus stood up and announced that everyone should pray for Alex to finally find a real job instead of playing soldier for a living. The whole room erupted in laughter while I sat there in my Goodwill dress, carrying the business card from a venture capitalist who'd just offered me $50 million. At Easter dinner, my brother Marcus stood up and announced that everyone should pray for Alex to finally find a real job instead of playing soldier for a living. The whole room erupted in laughter while I sat there in my Goodwill dress. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you, carrying the business card from a venture capitalist who just offered me $50 million. I hadn't been home to Charleston in 2 years. Not since the day I left the VA hospital with titanium pins in my left leg and a medical discharge that ended my military career at 28. But Easter was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be the moment I told my family about the tech company I'd been quietly building, the government contracts I'd secured, the breakthrough about to change everything. The family estate looked exactly the same. Sprawling antebellum mansion with white columns that had witnessed generations of sterling family success. But as I limped up the front steps in my discount store dress, I could already feel the judgment radiating from the windows. Inside, the dining room gleamed with fine china and crystal. Easter lilies adorned every surface, their perfume mixing with the scent of old money and older disappointments. The family had gathered in full force. My parents, Marcus with his investment banker wife, my sister Caroline fresh from law school, and various relatives who'd built fortunes on tobacco and Southern charm. Not a single military decoration adorned the walls anymore. The American flag that had flown in our foyer since my grandfather's World War II service had been quietly removed. Even the photo of me in dress blues from officer candidate school had vanished, replaced by Caroline's law diploma and Marcus's MBA certificate. It was as if Captain Alexandra Sterling had never existed, as if the woman who'd led supply convoys through Iraqi deserts was just an embarrassing chapter the family preferred to forget. My mother, elegant in her Chanel suit, barely looked up when I entered. "Alexandra," she said, her voice carrying Charleston aristocracy's chill. "I was hoping you'd wear something appropriate. Easter is about resurrection and new beginnings, not dwelling on past difficulties. Past difficulties." That's what she called 3 years of military service, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Purple Heart earned when our convoy hit an IED outside Fallujah. My father sat at the head of the table swirling bourbon in a crystal tumbler, looking away when our eyes met. But it was Marcus who delivered the killing blow. Standing with his wineglass raised, his voice carrying across the room with inherited confidence. "Before we say grace, I think we should all pray for Alex to finally find a real job instead of playing soldier for a living. Maybe it's time she learned what real success looks like." The room erupted in polite laughter, the refined cruelty that old Southern families had perfected over generations. My Aunt Rebecca actually applauded. Caroline smirked behind her wineglass. Even the hired help seemed amused. I sat there in my $15 Goodwill dress, my hand instinctively reaching for the business card in my purse. Just 3 hours earlier, I'd been in a downtown Austin coffee shop with Thomas Chen, a venture capitalist from Silicon Valley. "Miss Sterling," he'd said, sliding the card across the table, "Quantum Defense Solutions is exactly what the military-industrial complex needs. Your background gives you credibility that tech bros can't buy. We're prepared to offer $50 million for a 30% stake." $50 million. For a company I'd built in my spare bedroom while living on disability payments. For software that could revolutionize military logistics and save countless lives. For innovations grown from watching good soldiers die because of supply chain failures. But looking around that Easter table at my family's mocking faces, I realized they saw none of that potential. To them, I was just Alexandra the failure, the damaged veteran who couldn't transition to civilian life. Marcus raised his glass higher. "To real careers and real success. May we all find our proper place in the world." The family drank to that, their laughter echoing off antique walls like the sound of my childhood being buried alive. But as they celebrated my humiliation, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. If they wanted to see real success, I'd show them what a failed soldier could build when she stopped asking for approval and started taking what she'd earned. The call came at 11:47 p.m. while I was driving back to Austin, still wearing that Goodwill dress and nursing the humiliation of Easter dinner. I'd pulled over at a truck stop outside Columbia, surviving on gas station coffee and bitter family rejection. "Alex." The voice was familiar. Sergeant Major Patricia Vasquez, my former NCO from the 82nd Airborne. "I heard you were asking questions about Sterling Industries." "Sarge, I didn't realize anyone was tracking my research." "I track a lot of things, Captain. Especially when one of my best officers starts poking around companies that shouldn't be connected to defense contracts." Her voice dropped. "We need to meet. There are things about your family's business empire that you need to know. Things that go beyond Easter dinner mockery." "What kind of things?" "The kind that got Lieutenant Morrison's unit compromised in Syria last month." My blood ran cold. Morrison, a young officer killed when his forward operating base was hit by what intelligence called a precisely coordinated insurgent attack. 12 soldiers dead. "That was random terrorist activity," I said, but the words felt wrong. "Was it?" Vasquez's silence stretched like a tripwire. "Lady Bird Lake, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Come alone and Alex. Delete your browser history. Delete everything." For weeks, I'd been researching Sterling Industries' government contracts, trying to understand how my family maintained their wealth while other Charleston dynasties crumbled. What I'd found didn't make sense. Sterling Industries was primarily textiles and tobacco, yet they held massive defense consulting contracts worth hundreds of millions. I started digging deeper, using Army intelligence analysis skills, public records, SEC filings, subsidiary companies. What I found made my hands shake. Sterling Industries operated a classified consulting division with contracts spanning intelligence analysis, strategic planning, and, quote, specialized advisory services for overseas operations. Every major military setback in the past 18 months had been preceded by Sterling Industries consulting reports. Someone had been selling operational intelligence. Someone with access to classified military planning had been providing strategic advice that consistently disadvantaged American forces. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging or join Morrison permanently." I looked around the truck stop. A few long-haul drivers, a family with kids. But a man in a dark sedan had been parked across the lot for 20 minutes. Engine running. Phone pressed to his ear. I grabbed my laptop and headed inside, choosing a booth where I could watch all entrances. The deeper I dug into Sterling Industries' classified contracts, the worse it got. Every operation my former unit had been involved in, every mission that went sideways, every ambush that seemed too well coordinated, every intelligence leak that cost American lives, could be traced back to strategic assessments provided by Sterling Industries' consulting division. My family wasn't just old money living off inherited wealth. They were war profiteers, selling American military intelligence while maintaining the facade of patriotic Southern aristocracy. I cross-referenced personnel files and security clearances. That's when I found it. A consulting contract between Sterling Industries and Meridian Strategic, a private intelligence firm. The senior partner, Marcus Sterling, MBA, Wharton School of Business. My brother hadn't just mocked my military service at Easter dinner. He'd been profiting from it, using family connections and business credentials to access classified information that got soldiers like Lieutenant Morrison killed. The man in the sedan was now walking toward the truck stop entrance, his hand positioned near his jacket in a way that made my combat instincts scream warnings. I slipped out the back exit through the service area where delivery trucks provided cover. At my car, I noticed something wrong. My rearview mirror had been adjusted. Someone had been inside my vehicle. I popped the hood and found it. A small GPS tracking device attached to the battery housing, military-grade equipment invisible to anyone without training. Sterling Industries hadn't just been selling intelligence to foreign buyers. They'd been tracking me, monitoring my research, preparing to silence me like they'd silenced others who'd gotten too close to the truth. As I crushed the device under my boot in that parking lot, one thing became crystal clear. My family's Easter dinner mockery hadn't been casual cruelty. It had been strategic humiliation, designed to keep the failed veteran in her place while they continued their war profiteering operation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated exactly how dangerous a soldier could be when she discovered her own family had been selling her brothers and sisters in arms. Lady Bird Lake at night was a maze of jogging trails and shadows, the Austin skyline reflecting off dark water like fractured promises. I arrived 30 minutes early, using the time to scout escape routes and identify potential threats. Old habits from Fallujah: never walk into a meeting without knowing how to walk out alive. Sergeant Major Vasquez emerged from behind the boat rental pavilion at exactly 9 p.m., moving with the careful precision of a career NCO who'd survived 3 combat deployments. Even in civilian clothes, she carried herself like someone who'd led soldiers through hell. "Captain," she said, the title carrying weight in the darkness. "You look like you've seen better days." "Thank you, Sarge. Always knew how to boost morale." But I was relieved to see her. In a world where my own family had become the enemy, Vasquez represented something solid. "Boys," she handed me a manila envelope thick with documents. "What I'm about to show you never existed. If anyone asks, we never met, and you never saw these files." Inside were photocopied intelligence reports, financial records, and military communications dating back 2 years. The letterheads were a mix of DoD, CIA, and Sterling Industries consulting reports. "Operation Safeguard," Vasquez said, her voice barely audible over the lake lapping against the shore. "A joint DoD-CIA operation to identify and eliminate intelligence leaks in overseas operations. The military provided operational security assessments. The agency provided counterintelligence support. And Sterling Industries provided strategic consultation." I scanned the first document, my blood pressure rising. They were using our security assessments as a shopping list. Worse, they were selling those assessments to hostile forces, then providing, strategic advice on how to exploit the vulnerabilities they'd just revealed. Her face was stone in the moonlight. "Your family's company wasn't just profiting from intelligence leaks, they were creating them." The papers rustled in my shaking hands. Names, dates, locations. A catalog of American soldiers who died so Sterling Industries could profit from both sides of the information war. "How many casualties?" I whispered. 67 confirmed KIA over 18 months. Over 200 wounded. Vasquez's voice cracked slightly. "Good soldiers, Alex. Kids who trusted their leadership to keep them safe." I thought about Lieutenant Morrison and his 12 soldiers, about the families who'd been told their loved ones died in random attacks, about every memorial service I'd attended, wondering if better intelligence could have prevented those deaths. "Where's Marcus in all this?" Vasquez pulled out another document. "Your brother wasn't just a senior partner. He was the architect. Every security vulnerability that Sterling Industries, identified in military operations, every strategic weakness they reported to the Pentagon, Marcus designed them to be exploitable." The document showed wire transfers from foreign shell companies to Marcus Sterling's personal accounts, payments worth millions, dated weeks before each military disaster that had resulted in American casualties. "He was being paid to design ways to kill American soldiers," I said. The investigation was getting close when Sterling Industries suddenly announced they were transitioning to, domestic consulting only, and Marcus took a sabbatical. Perfect timing to avoid federal scrutiny. I felt like drowning in cold revelation. My brother, who'd mocked my service at Easter dinner, had been systematically designing ways to get soldiers killed for profit. "There's more," Vasquez said grimly. "Sterling Industries is about to announce a major government contract for cybersecurity consulting. If that goes through, they'll have access to digital infrastructure for every American military installation worldwide." "When?" "The announcement is scheduled for next week. After that, they'll be too embedded in national security to prosecute without compromising ongoing operations." I stared at the documents, my mind racing through tactical possibilities. This wasn't just about justice for dead soldiers anymore. This was about preventing future casualties, stopping a network that was actively designing vulnerabilities in American military operations. "What do you need me to do?" Vasquez smiled grimly. "What you do best, Captain. Infiltrate and extract." The Sterling Industries headquarters rose 32 stories above downtown Charleston, its glass facade reflecting harbor lights like a monument to Southern corporate power. The quarterly board meeting was in full swing on the 28th floor, showcasing executives and government officials mingling over bourbon and defense contracts worth billions. I stood across the street in my only business suit, purchased with my disability check for job interviews that never came. Tonight, those bronze star and purple heart ribbons pinned to my lapel weren't just decorations, they were my credentials into a world that had tried to erase me. Security was minimal. Sterling Industries traded on family reputation and old Charleston connections, not paranoid corporate protocols. I signed in at the marble lobby, my military ID earning a respectful nod from the guard who waved me through without question. The elevator ride felt like ascending into enemy territory. When the doors opened, I was hit by the low hum of power brokers making deals that would shape American military policy over aged whiskey and generational wealth. I spotted Marcus immediately. He stood near the windows in his custom Armani suit, left hand positioned to display his Wharton-class ring, while chatting with a man in navy dress blues. Even from across the room, he radiated confidence of someone who'd never questioned his right to profit from other people's sacrifices. My father appeared at Marcus's side, distinguished in his seersucker jacket, whispering something that made them both laugh, a sound that had once meant family gatherings, now twisted into something that made my stomach turn. I moved through the crowd, accepting bourbon I wouldn't drink and making small talk with Defense Department officials who treated me like a curiosity. "Afghanistan veteran," they'd murmur, "Purple Heart recipient," like I was a museum piece instead of a person. "Alexandra!" Marcus's voice cut through the ambient noise. He approached with arms extended, the picture of brotherly affection for anyone watching. "I can't believe you made it. I was so worried after Easter dinner. You seemed upset." I let him embrace me, fighting every instinct to pull away. This close, I could smell his cologne, the same expensive scent he'd worn since prep school, when he'd been the brother who helped me with calculus and promised to write during my deployment. "Wouldn't miss celebrating the family business," I said, voice steady despite the rage building. "Quite the success story you've built." "Sterling Industries has worked hard to serve our country," he said, eyes bright with what looked like genuine pride. "The cybersecurity contract is going to change everything. We'll finally provide comprehensive digital protection for American military installations worldwide." Digital protection. He said it like he believed it, like he'd convinced himself that selling American military vulnerabilities was somehow patriotic. Like the 67 dead soldiers on Vasquez's list were acceptable losses in his profit margin. "I need to ask you something," I said quietly, steering him toward the bar. "About your consulting work with overseas operations." His smile faltered. "What about it?" "The security assessments you provide. The vulnerability reports. Do you ever share that information with anyone outside official channels?" Marcus's face went pale, then flushed red. "Alexandra, what exactly are you implying?" "I'm asking directly. Have you been selling American military intelligence to hostile forces while designing security vulnerabilities for them to exploit?" The question hung between us like a live grenade. Around us, the reception continued. Laughter, negotiations, capitalism devouring national security one contract at a time. But in our corner, the world had narrowed to 2 siblings, and a truth that would destroy one of us. "You don't understand," Marcus whispered, composure cracking. "The consulting we provide, it's about identifying weaknesses before enemies can exploit them. We're making operations safer, more efficient. More efficient at getting soldiers killed? Marcus, Lieutenant Morrison's unit was massacred using intelligence that came from your reports." His eyes filled with fear. "That's not. You can't know that. Combat deaths happen all the time. It's war, Alexandra. Soldiers die when their own families sell them out. I said, voice low and deadly. How much did they pay you, Marcus? What's the going rate for American blood? Marcus stepped back like I'd slapped him. You're being paranoid, the stress from your injuries, the medications. Don't. The word came out sharp enough to cut glass. Don't you dare blame this on my service. I've seen the wire transfers. I know about the payments from foreign shell companies. I know about Operation Safeguard. Marcus's face went white as Charleston marble. Around us, the reception noise seemed to fade, replaced by the thunderous sound of my own heartbeat. My brother, the boy who used to build sandcastles with me at Folly Beach, stared at me with the eyes of a stranger. If you know all that, he said quietly, then you know I can't let you leave here tonight. That's when I saw him. My father approaching with two men in dark suits, their movements too purposeful, too coordinated to be casual board members. Corporate security. The kind that didn't ask questions and didn't leave witnesses. I'm sorry, Alexandra, Marcus whispered, and for a moment, he sounded like my little brother again. But some things are bigger than family. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the reception in red shadows. Guests gasped, glasses shattered, and in the chaos, I heard my father barking orders to his security team. But I was already moving, muscle memory from Fallujah taking over. In the dark, with civilians panicking around me, I had exactly one advantage. I'd been trained to fight in conditions like this. The first security guard reached me as I made it toward the emergency stairwell. I grabbed a crystal bourbon decanter from a nearby table and brought it down hard on his wrist. He dropped his weapon with a curse, and I swept his legs, sending him crashing into a group of fleeing board members. The second guard was smarter, keeping his distance while speaking into his radio. But he'd made the mistake of standing between me and the stairwell exit. I feinted left, then dove right, tackling him around the waist and driving him into the emergency exit door. We crashed through together, tumbling into the stairwell as alarms began blaring throughout the building. Behind us, I could hear Marcus calling my name, his voice broken and desperate. But I was already running, taking the stairs 3 at a time, my phone buzzing with an incoming call. I answered while descending. Alex, it's Thomas Chen. The venture capitalist's voice was urgent. I've been trying to reach you. There's something about your quantum defense solutions contract you need to know. The Pentagon didn't just approve your software, they fast-tracked it because Sterling Industries recommended it. My blood turned to ice. What do you mean? Your family's company provided the technical assessment that got your cybersecurity software approved for military use. They've been positioning you as their inside track to classified digital infrastructure. I stopped running, gripping the stairwell rail. They've been setting me up. Alex, if Sterling Industries has access to your software's back-end architecture, they could create vulnerabilities in every military system it protects. You haven't just built a defense company, you've built the perfect weapon for corporate espionage. The realization hit like shrapnel. My family hadn't just mocked me at Easter dinner to keep me in my place. They'd been manipulating me from the beginning, using my military background and technical skills to create the ultimate intelligence-gathering tool. Every government contract I'd secured, every military installation that would soon run my software, every classified system I'd thought I was protecting, it was all going to be accessible to Sterling Industries and whoever they were selling information to. I'd spent 2 years building what I thought was my redemption, only to discover I'd been constructing my family's greatest weapon against American national security. Thomas, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos around me. How fast can you get me in front of someone at the Pentagon who has the authority to shut this down? I can have you in Washington by morning. Do it. And, Thomas, make sure they understand that Alexandra Sterling isn't the problem. She's the solution. The abandoned warehouse outside Austin smelled of motor oil and broken dreams. But it was the perfect place to disappear, while Charleston police searched for a quote-quote disturbed veteran who'd attacked a corporate board meeting. I'd been analyzing my own software code for 8 hours, horrified by the realization that I'd built the perfect backdoor into American military systems. My encrypted phone buzzed. Safe house secure. Coming to you. 30 minutes later, Sergeant Major Vasquez arrived with Agent David Park from the FBI's Cybercrimes Division. Park looked exhausted, his suit wrinkled, and eyes carrying the weight of tracking digital threats that could cripple national security. "Captain Sterling," Park said, extending his hand. "Sergeant Major Vasquez briefed me on your family situation. We need to talk." I spread my laptop and printed code across a folding table. Sterling Industries didn't just profit from selling military intelligence. They've been positioning me as their Trojan horse into classified digital infrastructure. "Your software has been approved for how many military facilities?" Vasquez asked. 47 bases worldwide, with full rollout scheduled for next month, I said, pulling up deployment schedules. "Every system will be protected by quantum defense solutions and potentially accessible to anyone with back-end administrative privileges." "Who has those privileges?" Park asked, face growing pale. "According to the Pentagon contract, the software vendor, me, and the technical oversight consultant." I handed him a document. Sterling Industries was designated as oversight consultant based on their, quote, "comprehensive cybersecurity expertise." Park stared at the document. "They've been planning this for years." I found communications dating back to my medical discharge. Sterling Industries knew I was developing cybersecurity software before I even incorporated the company. They weren't just profiting from war, they were preparing to control America's digital defense infrastructure. "It gets worse," I said, showing encrypted communication logs. Sterling Industries has been in contact with Chinese intelligence services, Russian cyber operations, and Iranian digital warfare units. They weren't just planning to sell access. They were auctioning it to America's biggest enemies. Park's phone call brought grim news. "My supervisors are hesitant to move without ironclad evidence. Corporate espionage cases involving family members are complicated." "What's the timeline?" Vasquez asked. "The software rollout begins Monday morning. Once installed across military networks, Sterling Industries will have administrative access to everything: communication systems, logistics databases, personnel records, operational planning." "We have 72 hours, I said, thinking about Lieutenant Morrison and 67 other names on casualty lists. "We need documentation, recordings, proof for federal court," Park said. "I recorded my entire conversation with Marcus last night," I said, pulling out a small recording device. "Every admission, every detail about their operation." Vasquez shook her head. "That won't be enough. Sterling Industries will claim the recordings were doctored, that you're an unstable veteran seeking revenge." "Then we get them to confess again," I said. "But this time, we make sure the FBI is listening." "How do we get close enough without triggering their security?" Park asked. "We don't get close," I said, opening my laptop. "We let them come to us. Because there's one thing Sterling Industries doesn't know about quantum defense solutions. I built a kill switch into every installation." "You can shut down their access?" Vasquez asked. "Better. I can trace every unauthorized login, record every backdoor access, and document exactly who's exploiting American military systems." I looked at both of them. Sterling Industries thinks they're about to own America's digital defense infrastructure. Instead, they're about to confess their crimes on a system that's recording every keystroke. The House Armed Services Committee hearing room felt like a battlefield, with television cameras positioned like artillery and reporters packed behind the press barrier. I sat at the witness table in my dress uniform, every ribbon and medal catching the harsh lights that would broadcast this moment to millions of Americans. 4 days had passed since our digital trap had been sprung. 4 days since Sterling Industries had attempted to access classified military systems through my software's administrative backdoor, unknowingly recording every keystroke, every stolen file, every treasonous transaction. 4 days since the FBI had raided Sterling Industries' headquarters with warrants based on real-time evidence of foreign espionage. Now Marcus sat 20 feet away at the respondent table, flanked by a team of corporate lawyers in $1,000 suits. His face was stone, but I could see the tremor in his hands, the way his eyes darted toward the exits. Behind him, investors who'd trusted the Sterling family name watched their fortunes evaporate in real time. Congressman Rebecca Martinez, the committee chair, Called the hearing to order. We're here today to examine allegations of digital espionage and intelligence trafficking by Sterling Industries. Captain Alexandra Sterling, you may begin your opening statement. I leaned toward the microphone, my voice steady despite the weight of what I was about to reveal. Honorable representatives, for the past 2 years, Sterling Industries has operated a systematic digital espionage network that has directly compromised American military operations and resulted in the deaths of 67 service members. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Camera flashes erupted like muzzle fire. Congressman Martinez banged her gavel repeatedly, but the chaos continued for nearly a minute. These deaths were not casualties of war, I continued once order was restored. They were murders committed for profit. Sterling Industries, under the leadership of Marcus Sterling, and with the knowledge of senior family members, sold classified military intelligence to foreign governments while positioning my cybersecurity company as a Trojan horse into American digital defense infrastructure. Marcus's lead attorney shot to his feet. Objection, Madam Chair. These are unsubstantiated allegations from a witness with documented financial grievances against Sterling Industries and a history of family conflicts. Captain Sterling is a decorated combat veteran testifying under oath about threats to national security, Congressman Martinez replied coldly. You may continue, Captain. I pulled out the first piece of evidence, a server log showing unauthorized access attempts from Sterling Industries' administrative account. This document, recorded in real time by FBI cybersecurity specialists, shows Sterling Industries attempting to access classified personnel files at Fort Bragg on Monday morning at 0347 hours. The committee members leaned forward, studying the projected data on the chamber's large screens. Congressman James Burke, the ranking Republican member, looked physically sick. The access attempt was made using administrative privileges that Sterling Industries obtained through fraudulent technical oversight credentials, I continued. They used these privileges to download classified deployment schedules, which were then transmitted to IP addresses traced to Chinese military intelligence servers. Marcus's second attorney stood up. Madam Chair, these digital records could have been fabricated by the witness herself, given her technical expertise and obvious bias. These records were captured by FBI cybersecurity operations. Agent Park interrupted from the gallery. I have the chain of custody documentation here if the committee would like to review it. Congressman Martinez nodded. The evidence is admissible. Continue, Captain Sterling. For the next hour, I walked the committee through 2 years of Sterling Industries operations. Digital access logs showing systematic intelligence theft. Financial records proving payments from foreign governments. Communication intercepts revealing Marcus personally coordinating with enemy intelligence services. The most damning evidence came last. A recording of Marcus from our Charleston confrontation. His voice clear and unrepentant as he justified selling American military secrets. The consulting we provide identifies weaknesses before enemies can exploit them. Marcus's voice filled the chamber. We're making operations safer, more efficient. The silence that followed was deafening. Several committee members sat with their heads in their hands. Marcus's lead attorney made one final attempt. Madam Chair, my client has been the victim of an elaborate entrapment scheme orchestrated by his own sister, a mentally unstable veteran seeking revenge for perceived family slights. That's when the chamber doors opened, and someone I'd been hoping to see walked down the center aisle. My sister Caroline walked down the center aisle, her FBI escort trailing behind. Gone was the smug law school graduate who'd laughed at my Easter dinner humiliation. In her place walked a woman carrying the weight of devastating truth, a thick folder of documents clutched against her chest like armor. She took the witness chair beside me, her voice clear and strong despite the tears threatening to fall. My name is Caroline Elizabeth Sterling, and I've been an unwitting accomplice to my family's espionage operation for the past 18 months. The chamber erupted again, but Congressman Martinez let the chaos continue for a moment. Justice was finally being served on live television, and the whole world needed to witness it. Ms. Sterling, Martinez said once order was restored, please tell the committee what you know about your family's activities. Caroline opened her folder with trembling hands. Everything my sister has testified to is accurate, but the scope of Sterling Industries' espionage operation is even worse than she knows. She pulled out a document, her voice gaining strength. Sterling Industries didn't just sell military intelligence to foreign governments. They sold American civilians. The company maintained detailed profiles on military families, identifying those most vulnerable to financial pressure, emotional manipulation, and potential recruitment by hostile intelligence services. I felt the blood drain from my face. Military families, spouses left behind during deployments, children struggling with absent parents, all of them cataloged and sold like commodities. I have here payment records showing $3.2 million received from Iranian intelligence services for psychological profiles on 1,247 military families stationed at bases worldwide, Caroline continued. These profiles identified families facing financial hardship, marital stress, or children with behavioral problems, vulnerabilities that could be exploited for intelligence gathering. Marcus had gone white as Charleston marble, his corporate lawyers frantically whispering among themselves. "But that's not all," Caroline said, her voice breaking slightly. Sterling Industries also provided detailed security assessments of military housing, base schools, and family service centers to foreign operatives. They didn't just sell information, they provided blueprints for targeting American military families on domestic soil. She turned to face Marcus for the first time since entering the chamber. "My brother didn't just profit from soldier deaths overseas, he weaponized the vulnerabilities of their families at home." Marcus finally spoke, his voice cold and desperate. "Caroline, you're having a breakdown. The stress of law school, the pressure from federal investigators, the stress of discovering that my own family has been selling target lists of American children to enemy agents." Caroline shot back, her composure finally cracking. "Do you know what it feels like to realize that every family barbecue, every holiday dinner, every conversation about Alexandra's service was just intelligence gathering for your business operation?" She stood up from the witness table, pulling out a digital recording device. "I have 18 months of conversations with Marcus, our parents, and their business associates. Recordings where they laughed about military families struggling with deployment stress. Meetings where they planned which bases to target next based on family vulnerability assessments." She pressed play, and Marcus's voice filled the chamber. "The beauty of targeting military families is that they're already isolated and stressed. A little financial pressure, some targeted social media manipulation, and we can turn a sergeant's wife into our best intelligence asset." The reaction was instantaneous. Half the committee members stood up shouting. Reporters rushed toward the press barrier. Several military family members in the gallery began crying. "I recorded everything," Caroline said, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Every crime, every plan to exploit American families, every strategy to turn military children into intelligence targets. Because somewhere inside me, I knew eventually I'd have to choose between protecting my family's business and protecting my country's families." She turned back to the committee. "Representatives, I'm prepared to surrender myself to federal custody immediately. I'll plead guilty to accessory charges for any crimes I unknowingly facilitated. But I want Marcus Sterling and everyone in his network prosecuted for what they've done to American military families." As federal marshals approached, Caroline walked over to where I sat. She knelt beside my chair, tears streaming down her face. "Alexandra, I know you can never forgive me for staying silent so long. But I need you to know, when I heard what they really planned to do with your software, when I realized they were going to use it to target military families worldwide, that's when I remembered who I used to be before law school taught me that everything could be justified. I looked at my sister, this woman who'd mocked my service but was now sacrificing everything to protect military families she'd never meet. What you did can't be undone, Caroline. Those families can't unfeel that violation." "I know," she said quietly. "But maybe their pain can finally mean something if it stops this from happening to anyone else." The marshals led her away, leaving Marcus alone at his table as his empire burned around him and the world watched his family's legacy crumble into ash. The headlines dominated every news cycle for months. Sterling Industries CEO arrested on espionage charges. Sister's testimony exposes military family targeting ring. 1,247 American families deliberately compromised by corporate espionage. The cable news networks ran the hearing footage continuously, Caroline's confession and Marcus's cold justifications becoming the most watched congressional testimony in decades. I stood in Arlington National Cemetery, watching them inter Lieutenant Morrison for the second time. His family had requested military honors after learning his death hadn't been random terrorism, but deliberate murder orchestrated by an American corporation. His wife Sarah stood beside me in her black dress, their twin boys clutching small American flags with the solemn confusion of children who'd lost their father to enemies they couldn't understand. "Thank you," Sarah whispered as the honor guard presented her with the folded flag. "For making sure Danny's death finally has meaning. For making sure the truth came out." The Justice Department had moved with unprecedented speed. Marcus was denied bail and faced 73 counts of treason, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. His assets were frozen, Sterling Industries' government contracts were terminated immediately, and the company filed for bankruptcy within a week. The family estate in Charleston was seized as evidence, its antebellum grandeur now housing FBI investigators cataloging decades of espionage. Caroline kept her word, pleading guilty to accessory charges without seeking a plea bargain. During her sentencing hearing, she addressed the military families whose lives had been violated by Sterling Industries' intelligence gathering. "I know that saying sorry doesn't repair the damage to your privacy, your safety, your children's sense of security," she'd said, her voice steady despite the courtroom packed with victims. "I know that my regret doesn't undo the years you'll spend wondering who else has access to your family's most vulnerable moments. But I promise you that as long as I live, I'll work to make sure this never happens to another military family." The investigation had expanded far beyond Sterling Industries. 3 other defense contractors were indicted for similar family-targeting operations. The entire military support industry was under congressional scrutiny, with new oversight legislation requiring comprehensive background checks for any company with access to military family information. But the personal cost was devastating. The media attention had made normal life impossible. Photographers camping outside my Austin apartment, reporters calling my neighbors, death threats from people who blamed me for exposing American intelligence vulnerabilities. My own success felt hollow when measured against the destruction of everything I'd once called family. Tali. That's when Thomas Chen made an offer that changed everything. "Quantum Defense Solutions needs a new direction," he said over coffee in a downtown Washington cafe. "The Pentagon wants to rebuild cybersecurity protocols from the ground up, with someone they can trust absolutely. They're offering you a position as Chief Information Security Officer for all military digital infrastructure. They want someone who's already been tested by betrayal," I said. "Someone who can't be bought because they've lost everything that could be leveraged against them." Chen nodded. "The pay is excellent. The responsibility is enormous, and you'll spend the rest of your career ensuring that no family ever goes through what those 1,247 families experienced." 6 months later, I sat in a Pentagon office, reviewing cybersecurity protocols with the kind of scrutiny that would have prevented the Sterling Industries disaster. My team consisted of 12 other veterans who'd been betrayed by systems they'd served, people who understood that protecting America meant protecting the families who sacrificed for it. My first major initiative was the Military Family Digital Protection Act, requiring any contractor with access to family information to undergo continuous monitoring and psychological evaluation. My second was a comprehensive audit of every defense company with government contracts, using techniques I'd learned from tracking my own family's betrayal. Caroline wrote from federal prison every month. Her letters included updates on the victim advocacy program she'd started for military families affected by privacy violations, legal briefs she was writing to strengthen espionage prosecution, and always, the names of the 1,247 families Sterling Industries had targeted. She was keeping her promise, ensuring their violation would prevent others. I never wrote back. Some betrayals run too deep for forgiveness, but that didn't mean they couldn't heal into something useful. 3 years later, I stood in my Pentagon office, watching a room full of defense contractors shift uncomfortably as I presented my latest findings. Meridian Strategic, a cybersecurity firm with $800 million in government contracts, had been selling military family social media data to foreign psychological warfare units. "The pattern is unmistakable," I said, clicking through intercepted communications. Every family targeted for social media manipulation had children attending base schools where Meridian Strategic provided digital security services. They weren't protecting our families, they were harvesting them. General Patricia Hayes, the Secretary of Defense, leaned forward. What's your recommendation, Director Sterling? Immediate termination of all Meridian contracts, criminal referral to justice, and comprehensive audit of every contractor with family access. I looked directly at Meridian's CEO. We've learned that trust must be earned continuously, not inherited through corporate reputation. The investigation that followed would result in 12 arrests and prevent another massive family privacy violation. But for me, the real victory wasn't in headlines or prosecutions. It was in the message sent to every defense contractor in America. Someone was watching who understood the true cost of betrayal. My digital protection division had grown from 12 veterans to 47 investigators. Former soldiers who'd lost friends to intelligence leaks, military spouses who'd experienced privacy violations, Pentagon analysts who'd been punished for questioning suspicious contracts. We called ourselves the Family Shield Initiative, and our reputation had made contractor executives think twice before viewing military families as commodities. Late one evening, my assistant knocked on my door. Director Sterling? There's someone here to see you. Sarah Morrison stood in my doorway, no longer the grieving widow I'd met at Arlington Cemetery. She wore a Navy contractor's badge, her bearing confident and determined. Danny would have been amazed, she said, gesturing around my office with its walls covered in family protection protocols and contractor surveillance data. You turned his death into something that shields other families from what we went through. She handed me a folder. I'm joining your division next month. Pentagon approved my transfer from victim services to active investigation. Turns out having personal experience with contractor betrayal makes for very motivated oversight. I smiled genuinely for the first time in months. Welcome to the team, Mrs. Morrison. After Sarah left, I sat alone, thinking about the journey from that Easter dinner humiliation to this moment. The family that had mocked my service was gone, Marcus serving life in federal prison, Caroline working victim advocacy from behind bars, my parents living in exile in a Florida retirement community, unable to face Charleston society's judgment. But I'd found a new family among the investigators who'd chosen protection over profit. People who understood that sometimes the most important victories were measured not in personal success, but in families who slept safely because someone was watching the watchers. My phone buzzed with a message from Thomas Chen. Quantum Defense Solutions just received approval for the largest military cybersecurity contract in Pentagon history. Congratulations, Director. You've officially become the billionaire CEO who protects America's families instead of exploiting them. I closed the message and looked out at the Washington skyline. The woman who'd been mocked at Easter dinner for playing soldier had become the guardian, ensuring that no military family would ever again be sold as intelligence commodities. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's building something so strong that their weapons become irrelevant. The quiet revolution continued, one protected family at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.